Hello, welcome to another session of the Houdini training. My name is Gianvito Serra, and today we're going to talk a bit about the network view, this particular panel right here. In the last session, we talked a little bit about the whole UI, talked a little bit about shelves, a bit about the actual 3D viewport, and even a bit about the parameter view here, okay? I did feel that it is important to talk quite a bit about the network panel, or at least give it a little bit of attention in its own video, because of the fact that it is such a core, fundamental part of Houdini. I'm going to actually adjust my view here so that we can see a little bit more of the parameter view or the network view here as we use it, okay? Okay, so in the last session, we saw that we can, for example, create an item by just clicking on a shelf item here, and then having for example, a box being created and a node created here. And that's a way of course, to create assets inside of Houdini. What I'd like to show you is how to actually use Houdini or navigate Houdini using the network view, okay, which is a very common way of using the software. Shelves are very useful to getting a sense of how some things work, but ultimately all that they do is that they're macros for creating nodes inside of a network view. So say, for example, we wanted to create a box inside of the viewport without using the shelf. We could simply do that by pressing the tab key, which brings what is called the tab menu. The tab menu is a means for you to be able to actually create nodes inside of a network view. So if we go to primitive and we click on bots, you will notice that now I get a little widget that asks me where I want to actually place the node in my network view. So I can click on this, and then here is my node, and here is my bots. You will notice that in this mode, though, the bots is created at the origin, and I don't have the little heads-up display on the viewport that allows me to place it anywhere I want. That is just because when you are creating in the node view, you are actually building a node network, which does things in the 3D viewport, not necessarily the interaction that you actually expect on a viewport, where you're actually placing objects in 3D space. Okay. They both serve different purposes. The network view, you will find, though, is the way that most of the time you will want to work. From placing a node in the actual network view, obviously we can still rotate and move around in the 3D viewport, and we still get the little widgets that allows us to control the node that we just placed. Now, the property window is still available for us, or the parameter view is still available for us to be able to come here and, modify the location of assets in here as well. The parameter view is useful regardless of whether you create your assets in the viewport or regardless of whether you create your assets in the network view. Very cool. So just to show that again, if we come over here and we press tab, we can come in here you will notice that the tab menu has multiple submenus which allow you to access different nodes that do different things. So in the particular case, we went to the primitive sub node and we actually picked a bots, which is how we actually dropped our bots into place. Okay, so here is our two boxes. Now likewise, if we go press tab and we go under the primitive menu, you will notice that there is other nodes that we can also use. So for example, there is a sphere node, which creates a sphere. We can even scale right here. There is also even, for example, the circle node, which creates a circle, which we'll put over here. And we can even get some more sophisticated operators, even like, for example, the font operator, which has font, has a text on it. And we can even come in here and modify, for example, what the text says. So I can say, this is frame $F, and we'll cover variables in a little bit, but here is an example of how that works. And I will hide the grid view so you can see it a little bit better, and even show the points so that we can see it a little bit better. Or rather, we'll show the wireframe, the shadow, and you can see it a little bit better. There we go. Very cool. Now, in addition to creating objects in a particular fashion, and actually navigating where we want to go to find our object, which can be a bit daunting when you have the whole menu here. You also have a history where you can see your more recently placed nodes, but also you will notice that there is a little search section right here. Now, when you load the tab menu, the thing to remember is that you don't have to hold tab. You can press tab and release, and the tab menu will simply float, and you can just go over it with your mouse and do what you want to do, right? So that leaves your keyboard open to be able to, for example, type what you want to look for. So while the tab menu is open, if we start typing, for example, bots, you will notice that the search menu will immediately find me a bot, or the bots node, okay? And here it is. We can also come in here and do a search for sphere. Now watch, I don't even have to type the whole word. I could type SPH, and that brings the sphere node in from the list. Okay? So as you're starting to learn which nodes you actually like to use for your operations, you can always access them in very fast ways, As you build more experience with Houdini, you will find that pressing tab and looking for a node by just typing is very fast way to move on how to actually create assets. Okay? You can still use a shelf, of course, if you want to just quickly create a torus, and that is totally okay too. But I want to make sure that you see how it can be done using the Houdini and network view. Okay. Now, like we talked a little bit before, you can navigate the network view similar to how you navigate the 3D view. By holding the middle mouse, we can pan. By holding the right mouse, we can zoom in and out. And the left mouse simply brings a selection, allows us to select nodes. You can select multiple nodes, for example, or single nodes. Okay. One thing to note, if you select multiple nodes and you move a parameter in the parameter window, it will affect the parameter for all of the nodes that you have selected. It's a very useful thing to remember about Houdini. You will note it's a little bit hard to see on this video too, but values that differ in between nodes will be a little bit more gray. Values that are the same in between multiple nodes will be actually a little brighter, and you can even select switching between the parameter view for each one of your nodes by simply clicking them in this drop-down menu. Okay, selecting no nodes will simply leave your parameter window open on the last node you have selected, which is very useful. In Maya, if you use the attribute editor, you know that when you let go of your selection, you lose your attributes. So this is not the case here. You actually are able to always see some attributes in the screen, which is very useful. Okay. So let's show a few more things that we can do here. Obviously, you saw that I can, in addition to create a node, you saw me delete a node. You can simply do that by selecting any nodes in the network and just pressing the delete button. Okay. Likewise, if you have a node on the 3D view and you want to simply duplicate it, you can press Ctrl C and then press Ctrl V to duplicate that node. And now we have two boxes. You can do this with as many nodes as you have selected if you wanted to create, say, for example, 4 copies of a bot. Okay. So there is a lot of different ways we can go about creating nodes, in addition to how we do it in the tab menu. Now I like to show too that there is a tab menu available even in the 3D viewport, okay? Which actually gives us even access to, for example, the shelves that we have on the top, okay? It is important though to remember that the shelf that what we see here on the 3D viewport is a different tab menu than the one that we have in the network view. The tab menu in here, for example, allows us to do the 3D viewport sensitive operations like being able to place something in space like you would with a shelf. Whereas we create something with the network view is sensitive towards simply creating nodes. There we go. Very cool. Now here is another very interesting thing that we can do with creating nodes. Say I create a bots, and then I move it over here, and I create a sphere, and I move over here, and I'll create, and we'll make that one a little smaller, and then we'll go ahead and create a torus, and we'll move that over here. Okay, we'll make that one a little smaller too for the purpose of this example. We'll move these also out over here. You noticed also that nodes seem to have not just be little boxes, but they seem to have also some different things about them. Okay, so some of the things that you can control with nodes are, for example, the visibility of the object on the viewport by simply clicking on the little blue flag on the node, or their ability to select them. Okay, and I think I need to be in my select tool. There we go. See? Now I'm going to get a little bit into more detail later about the node boxes themselves and what they do with the little color boxes. But for now, what I wanted to show you is how do we actually connect these nodes so that their behaviors start being, so that they can start controlling each other's behavior in some way. Okay. So the beauty about nodes in Houdini is that as you're actually, it's not that it's not just that you create them in isolation, but you can actually connect them to actually create relationships in between their behaviors. So for example, if we pick these bots and we go to the rotate tool, you will notice that the bots rotates. We can even do the same thing with the sphere. We can do the same thing with the torus. Okay? So what we can do, for example, in this particular object context, is to connect nodes so that the transformation of one node affects the position of another node. And the way how you actually connect nodes is by left clicking on the plug at the bottom, okay, and release after you click, and you will get this little ghost wire moving around. Okay, you can use this to go and connect to other nodes. Okay, when you find a node that you want to connect, you simply left click to then create a connection. You notice that here the torus actually jumped from its original position to a new position, and I'm gonna demonstrate that again. So I'm going to undo, and I'm going to again left tap to bring this ghost wire, and then left click again to connect them. And you will see that what's happening now is that my transformation of my bots is affecting the transformation of the torus. So the position, because the bots has been translated on the C, the torus travels with it, and we can even rotate these bots and have the torus actually follow. Okay, we can do the same thing with the sphere. So we left tap, and then we go to the top wire, and then we left click again to connect them, and then we can see that there is a connection in between the two. Very cool. We can even use this to override connections. So for example, say I wanted the sphere to actually drive the torus and not the bots to drive the torus. Well, yes, you can do it in multiple ways. So for example, we could left click on the wire, okay, which when you click, it actually gives you the ghost wire again. Now remember, you don't have to left click hold, you can left click and release, and you will be in this mode. Okay, you can always get out of this mode by simply pressing escape. But if we left click on the wire and the wire turns yellow, we are right now editing the wire. And one thing that we can do after we do that is that we can right click on the node and say, oops, we can right click on the node and say disconnect. Okay, and that disconnects and the torus goes to its original position. At that point, we can simply left click on the output of the sphere and left click on the input of the torus, and now the torus will follow the sphere as I rotate it. And if I rotate the bots, everything follows everything. Very cool. Now say I wanted the bots to again drive the torus. Of course you can left click on this and do disconnect again, but you can also left click out of a bot and simply go where the actual sphere is controlling the torus in that input and left click to override that input. And that's a very quick way to rewire your network in a way that fits what you're trying to do. Very cool. Awesome. Another way to disconnect a node, if you don't like to have to find the wire and have to right click to find disconnect, you can always select a node and just shake it really hard and it will disconnect itself. If some of you have ever heard of the program Shake, it was a node-based architecture program which did this, which Houdini is borrowing from. Okay? Very cool. Now, another thing to remember is that the top wire is an input, the bottom wire is an output, okay? You can connect outputs to inputs, but we cannot connect outputs to outputs. That simply doesn't work. You can, if you want, connect this output, this input, but that creates generally a broken node because of a circular, never-ending relationship. So if that ever happens, remember, you can always undo, and that will get you out of that situation. Very cool. A few more things that we can do here. I'm going to go ahead and connect this like this so that we can see. Is that we can also, on some of these options that we have here, look at this, instead of, if we prefer, instead of using the tab menu, we can also bring in the tool palette. And the tool palette allows us to see all the nodes inside of that particular context of Houdini, for us to actually be able to simply drag and drop from here. So we can drop in a box, we can drop in a grid, all from like one place very quickly. Okay, without having to press the tab menu every time. Sometimes if you just want to drop multiple nodes at once, this is a very good way to do it. And you can still filter your list by using a filter here. So if I want to find anything that it starts with a T, I can do this, or so I say I want to find anything that is torus, I can do this, and then there is my actual torus. Okay, we can simply clear the filter here. Very cool. You can also, if you prefer, click on this, and this will switch a list view instead of a node view. So you can look at the objects in that particular level of your network that you are, and from there control visibility, selectability, or even a few other options that you don't see on the node. You can even filter your view by node types by using this. It is a view that I don't use often, but it is available here if you like to use it to see your whole network in one place. You can also click on this, which brings a network overview, which is this little map right here, which shows you all the nodes in your network and where they are located. See, you can even see the node that you have selected by doing this. I will also note that if for some reason you have a node selected and you lose it, you can always press F in your network view to actually bring your network back in focus. Okay. We can also color nodes. So if we click on this little color palette, we can pick on any node and color it whichever color we want. And this is a very good way to sometimes keep track of nodes that, say, for example, take a lot of performance, nodes that you may want to change in the future, or nodes that may have references to other nodes. Okay. You can also, if you like, organize your nodes by putting them into netboxes, which allows you to collapse a little section, and you can say that this is my parent nodes. Okay, you can move these bots around where you want. You can even click on this and color your subnetworks in any color you want. So if we select it, we can come in here and color it. Oh, there we go. I have selected. Very cool. If you're not happy with the network view, you can always click on this little X to delete it, and that will get rid of it and put you back where you were. You can also leave sticky notes for other people to see. So if you want people to see what this actually does, you can actually leave a note for the people to say that this moves the torus. And then people will be able to get that sticky note when they're looking at your network. It's great to sometimes also document your network as you're actually building it, so that people can see understand what your intentions were. This also can be fully colorizable. Just like the nodes, so we can leave sticky notes that are of different colors. Now here comes a very important one, which is the subnet node. subnet from selected. So you can actually select several nodes and create a subnet from the nodes that you have selected. Okay. Now what we have here is a single node that contains both the torus and the bots and the sphere, and the torus as a loose node over here. Now we're not gonna dive a little bit we're not gonna get too far into how heap files actually work in regards to like the node, architecture and the file structure, but I will show you really quick that at any point you can click on a node, or actually you can rather double click on a node, and that will take you inside of that node. Like in this case, I went inside of a subnet, and I can still see my bots and my sphere inside of this subnet. So then we can go back out by pressing the U key, and even rename the subnet something like subnet for parents, okay, or say for bots and sphere. At any point you can also select on a subnet and say extract contents, and that will bring you back to the way we were before. Okay. It is important to understand, and I'll color this white again, that you have the visibility flag here, which controls the visibility. But in some cases, depending on the node type, these flags will do different things. And if we go inside, for example, of the torus, and look at the node that actually creates the torus itself, okay, and I'll frame the torus here so we can see it a little bit better. You can do again this by double clicking into the node and going inside to see the node that creates the torus. Say, for example, I wanted to add a new node to this, and I press tab, and I go subdivide, which will subdivide my torus. You will notice that the blue flag can only be on one node at the same time, and this is because in this particular case, what we're looking is at construction history. So the blue flag actually determines the node that is the output node for that construction history, whereas at the top, if we go back out by pressing U, the blue node determines what the visibility of the actual objects are in your scene. Okay. And just a few more things. If you left click on a node to where you have a floating node and you have a little ghost wire, you can also press tab at this point and bring in automatically connect a node by picking a node from the tab menu. So if we click platonic solids here, I'm going to automatically create a platonic solid node that is automatically taking the transformation of a sphere, which we can see right here. I'll move it over here so we can see it. So now when I rotate this here, you will notice that both my platonic solid and my torus are affected by it. Okay. You can also, at any point, right click on the bottom of a node to bring in the tab menu, which allows you to also bring in connect nodes automatically without you having to left click into the output first. So some nice little shortcuts that you can use to very quickly drop nodes into the scene to do the operations that you want to do. Okay. Very cool. Thank you for watching, and I think this is probably good for this session, and we'll see you in the next sessions.